How the fella go about fixing a fishing pole?
Push 9, 1, 1.
Is that supposed to be funny, ha? Or funny tasting like beer?
What the hell are you doing that lawnmower plate?
I was down at my mama's house, and I was looking through the window, and there was a Jesse Dixon in there. He was just having his way with my fishing stuff. And I looked down on the floor, and there was one of my fishing poles, and it was broke plumb there in two. I just seen red. That little fella didn't deserve that.
Just tell him to bring an ambulance or a hearse.
It gets me every time. I love that Carl. I was wrong. All right. Yes, let's get serious. Let's get to work. Welcome back, everybody. Hey, it's part 2 of how to fix those broken fishing rods. And when we last left off, we were getting ready to discuss the backbone of our repair, and that's going to be our splint material. We don't have time to waste. Let's get to it. When it comes to the splints, I've seen a lot of different materials used. I've seen people use fine gauge wire. I've seen people use trim nails. I've seen people use wooden dowels. I've even seen people use chopsticks. Oh, very good. None of those items are wrong, and you can use every one of those. But when I started looking at this, I wanted to find a material that I could use that not only would address an inexpensive repair, but it would also address the expensive custom repairs where someone wanted to retain the original specifications that they purchased their rod for. So let's look at some different materials. If you guys are like me, it's very possible that you already have more than one broken fishing rod sitting around the house. And that was a scenario for me. I had 3. Now, if you've got more than 2 or 3 broken fishing rods around the house, I just want you to know that this is a safe place. There's no judgment here whatsoever. That's wrong. No, I'm gonna razz the crap out of you. Now, if you were hogging in a big bass, that's one thing. But if you broke that rod trying to hog in a big old cypress log, don't let me find out. I will razz the death out of you, I promise. Promise. But you know what? I'm here to make you tough. I'm here to make you strong. Yeah. Because I love you guys. So what I chose to do was take the one rod that was of less importance to me and use that as my donor material to fix my 2 higher end rods. Another option that you can do, if you keep an eye out at your local boat ramps, this week alone I found 2 broken rods in the trash can. This is one that I found. Pick these up. You can always use these. I guarantee at some point these will be perfect for repair in the future. So on the other hand, if you're doing a higher end repair and you're worried about retaining those exact specifications that rod was manufactured for, you can always go directly to Amazon and buy a rod blank specifically with the specifications that you're needing, and then you can use that to repair your rod. You can also use that for multi repairs as well. They range anywhere from 18 to 22 bucks. They're pretty inexpensive if you're doing a higher end repair. So at this point, we've determined whether we're going to purchase a rod blank for our splint material, or either we're going to use a broken section from another fishing rod. Either way, at this point now we're ready to cut this down to about a 12 to 16 inch section for our splint material. All right, now that we've got our 12 to 16 inch piece of splint material cut, what we want to do now is insert this through the broken sections of our fishing rod that we've already squared up and make sure that we got a good tight fit. We want to measure twice and cut once because we can't go back and do this a second time. So we want to make sure that we've got a good fit before we move on to the next step. Now, I've intentionally cut this splint material longer than what's needed on the front end because our next step, before we go to epoxy this, we're going to have to take some 220 grit sandpaper and sand the exterior varnish off this, get it down to a dull finish, so that when we go to epoxy this in our broken sections, we get a good adhesion internally with our epoxy. Now that you have this sanded down, if you need to reduce the length of this splint because of your specific repair, now's the time to do it. Always make sure that you sand your splint material first, work on getting that fit and finish first, and then go back and reduce the size of this as needed. Because when you're sanding that varnish off, you are slightly reducing the diameter of that splint, and it will cause it to fit differently in your broken section. So always sand first, then go back and cut if needed. At this point in the game, all that we've got to do is take our alcohol and go back and clean all of our sections up to make sure they're free of any grease or dirt. And also, in our broken section, we want to make sure we clean internally as well. Whoo, doggy guys, we're halfway there. We're ready to move on to phase 3. It's epoxy time. When it comes to our epoxy, there's a lot of options out there for you guys to choose from, so you can choose the one that fits your specific need. When I was putting this video together, I did want to take into consideration that not all rod repairs are going to be in the same price range. Somebody might be trying to fix a $20 or $30 rod. We definitely need to try to cut costs and maybe go with one product, whereas someone else maybe is doing a higher end repair and is looking for a real specific fit and finish. We may have to go with a couple different options on our epoxy. When it comes to our epoxy selection, the key factor that we need to take into consideration will be our cure rate. A lot of companies out there offer a variety of options, whether it's fast, medium, or slow cure rates. Just leave yourself enough time. I would probably say purchase something that's probably got about a 10-minute cure rate. This way you're not having to rush through that repair. All right, guys, I can tell you guys are getting antsy and wanting to go watch another TikTok video, so let me give you a couple little pointers. I'll let you get going on this section, and then we'll pick back up on part 3. So, here we go. So when you're mixing up your epoxy, make sure you follow your instructions on it. It should be a 1-to-1 ratio, and you just want to slowly mix it up. You don't want to go in there like you're mixing up some scrambled eggs. Not on this, because you'll introduce a bunch of air bubbles into that. So just work slowly. That's why I had advised probably using like a 10-minute cure rate. That way you don't feel like you're in a rush to get it mixed up. Also, when you epoxy your sections up, you do want to go back and apply some heat while that's curing. Something like a heat lamp with an infrared bulb or a hair dryer on low. I use the heat gun, but I kept it way back from it. You don't want to overheat this. A lot of them, I think they suggest about 90 degrees Fahrenheit is about the highest temp you want to get on that. Another important tip on your epoxy, do not try to epoxy both sections at once. You want to start with the butt section first, get that epoxied and cured up, and then come back and epoxy your tip section on. Another critical tip is when you go to epoxy your tip section on, you want to make sure you look down that rod, that you've got it straight in a line, and you also want to make sure that your guides are perfectly in alignment. You're also probably wondering why I've got Reynolds wrap on the table. That's a good question. Well, what you can do is, this is perfect. You can just tear off a little section of this and fold it over a couple times, and that works perfect for mixing your epoxy up on. Lastly, if you're working on a 2-piece repair and your brake happens to be in close proximity to your male ferrule, the main thing that you're going to want to do first is get a good measurement to know how deep that female ferrule inserts into this to seat up properly, and then ensure that when you epoxy in your splint that it's not in that area. Also, you'll want to keep some Q-tips handy when you go to insert that splint. If any epoxy gets in this first section, you'll want to go in there and wipe that out before that dries up. All right, ladies and gents, that's going to do it for today. I'm going to let you out of class early. You can get started on this little project, and we'll pick back up on part 3. Until next time, I'm going to get me some of them fried taters. Put me some mustard on it. I sure do like them. You guys be good. I love you guys. Be safe. We'll see you on part 3.